Good morning. I wasn't thinking I was going to do a show for this Thanksgiving, but happy Thursday. It's my usual time slot at 6:30 a.m. Pacific time on Thursdays, 9:30 Eastern Standard Time. And of course, my written word rolling out every Monday on globalwealthprotection.com. I wasn't going to do this show, but with the verdict of the Michael Brown case rolling out, I couldn't help it. I can't help it. I got to do another rant. uh, I guess I belong to a few of these discussion groups, political groups, and some of the commentary that I've been hearing and reading actually on Facebook is just so disheartening that I have to wonder if this death culture really stops at the state or if it's already pretty much metastasized throughout much of the constituency of the United States. Now, let me put this in a way that might give you some perspective on where I stand on the value of life. Okay. I am pro-life across the board. Okay, across the board. I mean, we can have that discussion at another time, but just to explain how consistent I am with this. I am not only against abortion, I'm against the death penalty, I'm against the wars, I'm against preemptive attacks on anything. I believe that deadly force is really something that is meant to be reserved for an instance of self-defense where violence was not originally provoked by yourself. So, example, I'm being chased by a would-be assailant who perhaps wants to either mug me, kill me, rape me, I don't know, but definitely has violent intentions. They catch me and I'm able to get away, but only because I took that person's life. I end up, I grab something out of my purse, stab him, and I actually get him in a place that ends up killing him and he dies. Okay. Let's say this happens. I'm not sitting there saying, well, one less piece of shit on earth. No. I still lament the fact that I had to take a life. I have to live with that, right? That should be a heavy burden to carry. And I know it is, because if you see these soldiers coming home who know they're responsible for killing somebody who may or may not have posed a threat, okay? My guess is they didn't pose a threat, but let's say they did. Even if they did, they have to sit there and rationalize in their minds that they took somebody's life and it was okay. It was okay what you did. That they have to do that, because if they don't, they fall apart. And that's what PTSD, part of it is. They had to respond with deadly force. A person who otherwise would not have killed somebody under any other circumstances other than that occupation. They have to reconcile this. And part of the consolation is that it was probably necessary. They were just doing their jobs. Without that, they might as well be dead, which is probably why so many veterans are killing themselves to begin with, is because that argument falls apart really quickly. Because I'm sure they know a hell of a lot more than we do, and I'm running on the assumption that their killing was unjustified. Okay. So then you have something that happens like the Michael Brown case. And I hear people saying things like, well, one less asshole breathing the same air, one less scumbag, one less this. He was an 18-year-old kid. Okay, let's put some shit in perspective for a moment. He was an 18-year-old kid, boy, man, whatever. I'm not trying to trivialize it. I'm not trying to make him out to be younger than he was. He's 18 years old. He was the age of majority, a legal adult. He was an adult for less than a year. Okay, not an experienced adult. We'll put it that way. I mean, he was asking for permission to go to the bathroom up until like a couple of months before he died. So let's not. I mean, that's like saying, well, now that the child's out of the womb, probably should go and get a job. I mean, no, he just became the age of majority. He just legally was allowed to make choices. Okay, and admittedly, probably wasn't making the best choices. Wasn't making terrible choices either. Okay, he wasn't making the best choice. Now, because I mean, for one thing, he was smoking. I mean, let's just call a spade a spade. That wasn't the best choice a person could make with with their autonomy, but he was buying cigarettes. Whether or not he stole them, I'm willing to accept that he did. Okay, I don't. I'm hearing that there's evidence in both directions. He never got a trial, so we actually don't know that he was a thief. Okay, he didn't get a trial for that one. So, but let's say he did steal the cigarillos. Okay, I'm willing to put that out there. 18-year-old has an attitude, a chip on his shoulder, and shoplifts. Now, if I were to exterminate every American boy who does this at 18, my dad wouldn't have made it past 18. More than likely, your dad wouldn't have made it past 18. Okay? Now, my dad, statist as he was, turned his life around. Okay? He didn't continue a life of crime, per se. I mean, it was state-sanctioned crime. He was a cop. But he certainly didn't continue to, to boost people's hubcaps long past 19 years old. It was a phase. Okay. Did he have an attitude? Yes, he did. He was a bit of a dick. But despite all that, I certainly wouldn't go so far as to say, well, he probably should die. Or if he had died prematurely, at the hand of a cop, the last thing I would have said was, one last asshole. One less asshole on this earth sharing my air. I cannot have, and I cannot be convinced to be so dismissive of a human life. Okay, I can't. And this is why I'm pleading that people would please take this Michael Brown case seriously, but more so personally. And the reason why I say this, and the reason why this identity and this identification with Michael Brown is so imperative, is because this is what's going to separate you from the animals, the vicious state animals who have no empathy whatsoever and are so busy trying to justify their brute force that not for a minute could they even think that this could have been them, it could have been their wives, their children, their loved ones, their friends. We need to identify with Michael Brown. It's important for our humanity that we do. Identify with him as your brother, as your friend, as your son, all of those things, because he was those things to someone else. And certainly, when you look at, say, the most troubled person in your family, I don't know if you would necessarily be stoked on the idea of seeing news piece after news piece, pundit after pundit, and asshole on Facebook after asshole on Facebook, talking about how they deserved it. They got their comeuppance. No, they didn't. No, they didn't. Let's be very clear about Michael Brown's situation. When he was killed, they didn't know if he was an asshole. They knew one thing and one thing only: he was jaywalking. They didn't know he stole anything. They didn't know he had an attitude. They didn't know shit about him. All they knew was that he was jaywalking and obstructing traffic. That was it. Therefore, the response from the cop was to park in the middle of the road, obstruct more traffic, and start firing off live shots in public where there are innocent bystanders watching. This is a residential neighborhood. This was not a business district where it could have been closed. No, this is where people live all the time. Live shots at an unarmed man in sandals. I don't care how big he was. That guy did not go out looking for a fight. I'll tell you who did, though. The cop jumped in his uniform, brushed his hair, washed his face, slapped on some fucking deodorant that day, that I'm gonna find me a fucking fight. He got dressed for the fucking occasion. That guy woke up for a fight. Every cop does. Michael Brown did not wake up for a fight that day. Michael Brown had plans to go to college. So, despite his attitude, despite perhaps some of his possible petty theft, at the end of the day, he deliberately signed up to go to school. That doesn't sound like a loser. That sounds like somebody who wants to get the fuck out of his situation. Who goes to school? Somebody who has no future, somebody who's given up on themselves? Really? I mean, I love hearing from all these self-righteous assholes how, well, they were 18, they weren't shoplifting. Well, good for fucking you. But you know what? Shoplifting, I mean, seriously? Then the only person who had a right to shoot him was the shop owner, not the cop. The cop still was not justified in killing him. Because according to the cop, his job is to enforce the law and enforce the law only, and the penal code is part of the law, and the penal code does not say that shoplifting is a capital offense. I'm sorely disappointed in people who can be so dismissive of human life. I'm already disappointed in people who think that, you know, that for some reason the number of cells that have developed in your body determine whether or not you get to be thrown in the trash can or not. But the fact that a full-grown man is walking up and down the streets on a public road, he's not trespassing. The cop didn't shoot him for shoplifting. He didn't shoot him for anything other than perhaps talking back and trying to defend himself against his aggression. There's a huge chunk of shit missing in there between the time that he approached Michael Brown and the time that Michael Brown got shot. And the only thing I know is that any number of things could have happened, but I doubt the man in sandals was looking for a fucking fight with a cop. You don't attack people with guns. Albeit there are people who do, but I don't think Michael Brown was like, oh, that's it. I'm going to wail on this man. Hold up. Can you hold my cigarettes? Go back to wailing on a man who has a gun. That's ridiculous. That's not it. And the problem, even more so, about all of this is not only how quick we are to trivialize it. God, people were just waiting there looking at their watches saying, when is my evidence going to come out? When can I say, job well done, copper? Because as shit was rolling out, the first things that were coming out, well, I'm going to wait until all the facts are in. All the facts? You mean your facts? The ones that support, that support you and what you want to believe about this situation? Those facts? Oh, they're going to come out the moment they have to answer to the press and the moment that they have to answer to a courtroom. Those facts will magically appear. How does a coroner who's worked on 20,000 autopsies, is one of only 400 accredited forensic scientists in the United States, get discredited all of a sudden. How is that possible? The same man who worked on the Kennedy assassination, the same man that worked on the Martin Luther King assassination. Now, that his findings were covered up is a different point. But the point is that he was never discredited. And he certainly didn't get it wrong on the Michael Brown case. There are strong evidence out there that was never allowed to be presented that Michael Brown was not in the 25 to 35 foot range. There are so many things that are wrong with this case, it's ridiculous. And people are so busy focusing on the character aspects of Michael Brown as if him being a dick warranted dying. Lauding it. Or even being apathetic towards his death. No, you don't get off that easy. You're no different. You're no different than the asshole who pulled the trigger. You need to suppress your inner sociopath for just a moment and remember that the only thing that keeps you from being sociopathic is having some regard for life. When you're looking for reasons why it's okay that somebody's life gets prematurely taken from them, you've got problems. Ethical ones. Time to do a little introspection. But here, as I was about to start and say, the argument for the cop was that he was defending his life against this dangerous man. Dangerous man. Well, whatever it is, could it have been more dangerous than apprehending a killer? A known killer. Someone you know has already picked off at least 5 people and is looking for another 5. Is it more dangerous than that? As dangerous as that? Equal to or greater than. This is the equation. Was Michael Brown posing as much of a threat as some of these mentally deranged mass shooting perpetrators? We've had several people go into schools and kill over 4 people. Okay. Here's what's really interesting. We have people in our prisons right now who have killed. How the fuck did these killers, known killers, suspected killers, how did they get apprehended? How did they live to see a trial? How did they live long enough to make it to jail? How did the cops manage not to kill this man who poses a threat if they are in fact a killer? You can't pose more of a threat than that. And yet, they managed to see a trial. But Michael Brown is jaywalking and is mouthy. And that cop, for no other reason, should be fired because he doesn't know how to de-escalate a situation and diffuse a situation. He only knows how to escalate a situation and flex his fucking nuts. Well, somebody needs to castrate his fucking badge off. because that is highly irresponsible, if not unprofessional and unbecoming of somebody who's supposed to be trained in diffusing a chaotic situation, not making it worse. You have to wonder what the fuck happened between the routine jaywalking citation and pulling the trigger, as if the cop was just sitting there poor and defenseless and completely unculpable of provoking anything physically. I'm not talking about words being said. I'm talking about physical. Who threw the first blow? Who made the first physical attempt on the other? The first physical attempt at the other, because whoever did that is the real guilty party. Because at this point, now it's two people fighting. My question is, who started the fight? Because whoever started the fight has a right to try and end it. And if Michael Brown was trying to end that fight, because I don't believe that he was looking for a cop. The cop was looking for him, though. So already, the cop was looking for a fucking fight. But I'm still wondering how the fuck we can have heightened, fucked up scenarios, like hostage situations, and someone can come in and talk it all down, okay? How do they do that? And why the fuck isn't everybody trained to do that? Can somebody please riddle me this? Fearing for his life? Fearing for his life? Not an excuse. Not an excuse. That's not enough anymore. Not if you're going to go look for a fucking fight. If you're really fearing for your life, call in sick that day. Because your job calls for you to provoke violence. And provoke people to the point of violence. So if you're really afraid of fighting somebody that day, perhaps you need to call in sick. But that's your job. Your job is to start shit. That's what cops do. I'm just doing my job by extorting you for fucking broken taillight. I'm just doing my job by extorting you for going with the flow of fucking traffic, which happens to be over the speed limit. $475 later. But the cop is inherently a criminal asshole, okay? The cop is inherently that. That's their occupation, is to be a fucking pirate. So, there's that. But please don't think for a moment that it is a viable argument that you would somehow introduce the character traits and the personality shortcomings of Michael Brown and somehow feel like, well, he was asking for it. Nope. Nope. That's not it. There are plenty of people who start off making poor choices and have the rest of their lives to turn their shit around. What else is life but one long lesson that you would hope that you would make better choices the next day than the day before, that you would do something better and make something more of yourself the next day than you did the day before, that you would learn from whatever the fuck didn't work yesterday the next day when you wake up. That's all life is. And certainly Michael Brown did not, all the things that I'm hearing about him, like his worst fucking attributes. Even if I were to accept all of that as true, doesn't distinguish him from any other 18-year-old boy. I remember 18-year-old boys. Freshmen in college / senior in high school, thinking they got the world by the damn balls. Condescending, it's all get out. Fuck my parents, I got this shit. Oh my god. And those were the good ones. Okay? You can't have more pomp than an 18-year-old boy. And I knew, and most of the 18-year-old boys I knew were smoking weed and have shoplifted like a Snickers bar. Some nonsense like that. And now, most of them are family men, hardworking, honest people who just go about their life. The same can be said, for drug statistics, that by and large, people grow out of that. It's a phase. But we'll never know with Michael Brown, because Michael Brown's life was no longer than a fucking phase. He doesn't deserve to breathe the same air you do? Look who all of a sudden became nobility. You're so fucking awesome. You're so fucking awesome. You can sit there and say that. I've got news for you. Everyone has the right to breathe your fucking air. You're really not that special. It's one thing to believe that you're a unique individual, and that's what sets you apart from everybody else. But it doesn't make you better. Your life isn't more valuable. It just isn't. You cannot have a civilized society without empathy, and you cannot have a civilized society without some regard for life, and you cannot have a civilized society until you realize that your life is as valuable as Michael Brown's. And that Michael Brown was simply a variable. It could have been anybody. The riots that are happening in Ferguson, while I condemn the violence and I condemn the looting, okay, this is a problem that is endemic with a system like ours. This is an inevitability, okay? And if the police, of course, because they're stupid, I mean totally fucking stupid, and the politicians who pull their little strings along aren't any fucking better. But because the state is so fucking concerned about maintaining their control and their power, they're going to amp up all of their fucking tactics. Right? Whatever police brutality you thought you knew about before, we're going to inject that with steroids now. All this shit is used as an excuse. Watertown was used as an excuse to amp up fucking police brutality and police force. This is going to be used as an excuse as well. Every fucking time something it becomes high profile like this, rather than try to address the social issues involved, they use it as political leverage on some bullshit like that's completely unrelated. Gun control. Where's the gun control advocates now? They're nowhere to be found. Do you know why? Because they're kind of hoping and wishing that Michael Brown was packing as well, so that at least the playing field would have been even. Because this is what the Second Amendment was about, believe it or not. This right here, this Michael Brown situation, is what it's about. Ferguson is a symptom, is symptomatic of a very ill society. And yes, it's starting in black ghettos, working its way to black working class neighborhoods, but it's metastasizing nonetheless. It is a malignant disease, and believe me, there's going to be a point where it's not going to be a race issue at all. It's going to be a status issue. Are you a member of the state or aren't you? Are you part of this political class or aren't you? If you're not, you're fair game. There's nothing to do. Right now, it starts with race and socioeconomic status, but I'm already seeing plenty of stories where that does not come into play. Fullerton, Kelly Thomas, white dude, well liked, neighborhood homeless guy. People knew him. Sobriety checkpoints, border checkpoints. It's not going to stop with this. If you're thinking that the Michael Brown thing is just a black problem, it's not. If you're just thinking it's a poor person problem, it's not. And it's not just a Missouri problem. You're more likely to be killed by a cop in Utah at this point than you are by any other gang members. Think on all of that. Separate yourself ethically from the brute class. You're better than that, for sure. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Hug somebody you love, and we'll catch you next week. Thanks.